Large cappuccino. Orders up.
Welcome back to the Athlete Cafe podcast. And if you're wondering, it's just me today with Mental Breakdown. Slightly edited, unfiltered, going through America's biggest sporting event, the Super Bowl. And happy 1 year anniversary also of Mental Breakdown. We started this last year. We convinced the bosses to let us talk about sports on this podcast and break it down, right? So if you're listening for the first time, Mental Breakdown is where we break down the world's largest sporting events and break it down from my job as a mental performance coach from the mental standpoint. What routines are they doing? Do they set good goals beforehand? What do I notice different than just looking at the X's and O's? We're going to look at the mental X's and O's and really just try to figure out and give you guys insight of how, as an athlete, when you watch sports, look at it from the mental standpoint, not just, the technique, the tactics, and, the physical, behemoths that these players are on the field sometimes, right? So if you're listening, if you're one of my athletes out there, I asked a bunch of them last week for their game picks, right? And out of the 9 athletes that I asked in these sessions, 6 of them picked Kansas City, only 3 picked the winners of this actual game eventually. Spoiler alert, the Philadelphia Eagles, right? And by Kansas City, usually it was averaging 33 points in these things, and Philly was averaging 29. So people thought the Chiefs were coming, and they were coming to score. So let's get to it. Let's start off. I know normally you start with kickoff, but we're going to be doing it a little bit differently today. We got first play of the game of the Super Bowl. Eagles have the ball here. And I think what everyone in the building thought, who's getting the ball first? That man who ran for over 2,000 yards, Saquon Barkley, right? And the big thing, right, is a lot of teams now like to defer to the second half, right? And there's a lot of reasons for that. But really high energy when you first come out, right? This is the biggest game, and I think this is the cool thing of it being a rematch is at least both these teams have been here before. What you notice a lot of times with athletes sometimes in their first big game is they're ready to just run through a brick wall. They're way too excited. They might be extremely hyper and trying to manage that energy, right? So that's why you come out, you just hand it off to Saquon, and you just take it easy and kind of let that first play settle you into the game, because otherwise it's going to be a really kind of long time. Moving forward, we're going to be going a little bit farther on here. 4th and 2, first big play of the Super Bowl, I would say, right? Going forward early on 4th down, sticking to true Eagles fashion throughout the seasons of, going on at 4th and short. This is something that's newer throughout the entire NFL, I would say, over the past 5 years, which is just really crazy, right? These guys go for it. And this used to be punt all the way, right? You might take a penalty. You might try to draw off sides, take the penalty, and then punt. This is the new NFL, the new version. Stats are very heavily involved, right? You're more statistically likely to get it from this yardage, or it's just not worth the punt, basically. So you see it. We have Jalen Hurts. He's dropping back to pass. He's going for who? His boy, A.J. Brown, and gets it. Catch, converts on the 4th and 2, the long ball. But wait, there's a penalty flag on the field. And this was one of the big storylines coming in, right? And if you're a player, you'd probably try to avoid the media. You can't, right? This is the biggest event in the United States. You've been having media coverage for 2 whole weeks. You have a whole media day, right? You know that the Chiefs, right, might be getting, favoritism from the refs, right? This leaked script says that they're going to win with controversial calls. And this is the first big one, right? Was it pass interference? Was it not pass interference? We'll never know. You that's for the viewer to decide, right? Was it? The cool thing, I think, too, is I think Philadelphia knew this narrative, right? They knew the narrative coming in, and I think that's extremely helpful, right? They didn't try to play to that narrative and get upset when this happened, right? They just continued with their business. And this is something that we talk to athletes a ton about. Control the controllables. And what does that mean? You really just have to focus on the things within your control, right? He's trying to play. You kind of see the hand to the face there. He's going for the ball. He's getting it. And the really nice thing, I think, the fascinating thing was a couple weeks ago, you see A.J. Brown on the sideline reading a book, right? Like, what? What the heck? Why is an NFL player allowed to read? Why aren't they watching film? Why aren't they doing this or that? And it kind of opened this conversation with the Super Bowl as well of he's reading this book, Inner Excellence, by I think Jim Murphy, I want to say is the author. You can correct that later if I'm wrong, hopefully. And by the time, right, that people found out what book he was reading, on the Amazon bestseller list, it was like 523,867 on the list. And it shot all the way up to number one, right? Just because one NFL player was reading it on the sidelines. And like I said, it opened up this amazing conversation of these guys do that on the sidelines, right? They practice breathing techniques. They're allowed meditation, yoga, right? Nick Sirianni, Eagles head coach, was saying that. He's like, let the players, it's for them to get their minds right in this game. They're not going to learn a ton of things watching film, right? Usually that's just for the quarterbacks almost to kind of see certain things, or offensive linemen to see, this is what's going to happen again. They might run this play, so you need to block here. So as much as you get those little tactical pieces in there and maybe focus on a little bit of a technique piece, there's, this mental side to the sport that's out there on the sidelines now, which I think is really cool to kind of watch these players, what they're going through. Some offensive players right now on the screen, you see like Patrick Mahomes and the offense out on the field for their first drive. And then you see the Eagles, right, just waiting to, play defense. And what you notice sometimes on the sidelines is these players are, they're not watching the games, right? This is their job. So what do they need to do to make sure that they're performing at their best, right? So first drive for Kansas City, right, trying to get things going. Looks pretty good. The cool thing also, right, speaking of preparation, we just had a confidence podcast episode recorded right before this one, is preparation matters. And both of these teams, usually first 15 to 20 plays are all scripted, right? They're all done out in practice. They're done through the walkthroughs. They have the preparation, right? They know these are the play calls on this drive, no matter what's going to happen, except unless, you can kind of kill the play and change a couple of things. But usually these are the plays we're going to stick with. And then the nice thing, we'll get into it after this, is in the second half, it's the same thing. They come out, they have about 10 to 15, I believe, or 8 to 12 scripted plays to kind of start off drives, right? So that's the really cool piece with this that you'll see sometimes throughout the season. If you notice teams that are good at opening drive touchdowns, they always somehow go down and score. They have a really good script built in, right? They've prepared really well this week. They watched film, they broke the things down, and now you can kind of mentally take that break and relax. We're going to move on. We're going to move forward in this, and we're going to try to get to, hopefully, the Eagles driving down the field, getting to the goal line. And what you notice here, right, this is the famous play now. This is often talked about, especially we saw it a lot in the NFC Championship game, the tush push, the brotherly shove, right? It's no longer about just having a quarterback sneaking and diving. It's this whole piece of there's two guys behind him, and we're going to just shove them. We're going to push them into the end zone. And I hope if the NFL, you're listening to this, get rid of the ability for players to push the player in with this type of play, because I think that will stop it, right? We saw it a lot in the NFC Championship game between the Washington Commanders and the Philadelphia Eagles, right? You literally saw a linebacker dive over the line so many times where they almost were like, we're going to just award the touchdown if that play happens again. So the really cool piece with this is something, once again, that you can have extreme confidence in, right? Is this play works like 92% of the time, whatever it may be. And the players have said it. They don't really like running this. And then I saw another clip of Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley on one of the late night shows talking about it, right? Especially Saquon. He's like, I thought it was called the tush push, and he actually learned that it's not the name of the play call, right? So a little bit of fun there, but these guys have the confidence. One thing I want you to notice, though, right, as a player, right, and hopefully this is what the Eagles players are noticing, is they get the play, they get it down to basically the 1 yard line. And if you look here, you see the Chiefs players starting to point off sides, and that's immediately when this ball is snapped, right? 2 or 3 players are not focused. And that's the biggest thing. That's going to be a drive killer. Not that they might have been able to stop it anyway, but you have 3 players that are trying to draw this penalty, and instead, right, they are no longer focused. They are just watching Jalen Hurts sneak in for this touchdown, right? We'll play it one more time here just so you can see it. You can kind of see, I think that's number 20, Justin Reed, right? He's pointing. Another Nick Bolton, right, also pointing. And that's when they snap it, hike it, and touchdown. Eagles strike first. And in Super Bowl history, of all the Super Bowls, all 59 of them, the team that scores first wins 2/3 of the time. So can the Chiefs overcome a little bit of this statistical unlikelihood? And they can't convert, right? They're not together. And I think that was the fascinating thing watching this game, is how disjointed the 2-time defending champs were coming into this. And people were saying, they should have all this confidence in the world. They should look good. It's also a lot of pressure. And that was one of the cool things I was reading on ESPN after the game a couple of days later was, these coaches apparently feel immense pressure to make sure that Patrick Mahomes is being utilized the correct way, which is just very conscientious, which is very cool, but it puts a lot of pressure, right? And this is a lot of pressure to try to go. They're going for the 3P, or what people were saying, the Chief Pete, and it's a difficult thing to do. It's hard to accomplish. It's hard to do right, and we're going to end the first quarter with the score being 7-0 Philadelphia. And as we continue on, right, kind of shocking, the Chiefs, once again on this play right here, 3rd and 3, they were the best team in the regular season, one of them at converting at almost a 50% rate, and things are just off, right? Things aren't going your way. And if you're an athlete, right, you have to try to regroup, recalculate a little bit, and figure out what those things are, right? So now when you're in this later part of the game, the second quarter, usually those scripted plays are gone. So now you're going, deep into the bag. What are the plays that worked? What are the plays that I can see based on what the defense is kind of giving me? But you have to try to get some energy, right? And I think that's the cool thing. If you are on a team, whether you're team or individual, try to find that person or thing that gives you energy, right? What is that source for you? So moving on into our next play here. One of the people that I was most impressed with, it wasn't Jalen Hurts, who eventually went on to win Super Bowl MVP. It wasn't the Eagles defense, who maybe all should have won Super Bowl MVP. It was kicker Jake Elliott. Kicker Jake Elliott had a super down year in the regular season. But look at this, right? Had to keep basically making field goals. And we were joking about this the other day. He was like 7 for 4 on field goals because he had to keep making them, right? So he makes, 43-yard attempt, easy, done, hit, 10-0, right? We're in the double digits now. But wait, there's more. There's another flag on the field, and did it look like the Chiefs jumped off sides? No, of course not. It's rigged, right? That's what they're saying. And instead, the Eagles false started. So this gets pushed back 5 yards, right? So kickers are one of my favorite athletes on a football field because they have such an ingrained routine, right? You can see them start warming up beforehand, get that leg loose, right? Physically and mentally, right? Getting ready, figuring out which hash mark they kind of want, right? That's that kind of technical, tactical piece. So it's really cool that they kind of blend all 4 of those main big aspects of sport, right? Physical, mental, technical, and tactical. And a 48-yard field goal is not easy, right? And like I said, this guy's having an off year. Pushing it back 5 yards is a big deal, especially, well, luckily they're playing indoors, but it's a big deal because now he has to kick this thing again. He just kicked, he made it. Usually, depending if you're superstitious or not, which we'll get into in a second, will he make it again? And he absolutely almost drills it, right? It looks like it's cutting out wide, and it comes back in. 10-0 Philly. Jake Elliott, super impressive because of his patience and ability to follow his routines, right? They all take the steps back, walk, and just continue onwards. And then here we just see the domination of the Philadelphia Eagles defensive line, getting past this Chiefs offensive line that's been really good. And we see they're the back-to-back Super Bowl champions, but back-to-back sacks for the Eagles. And this is where you don't want to rush, right? And I felt like you just kept seeing them rush and rush, right? There's 5 seconds left. You don't know what the defense can kind of change up and switch here in coverages. 3rd and 16, long yardage situation, right? But if anyone can do it, it's these Chiefs. It's Patrick Mahomes finding and working his magic. But they just need to start settling in. And this is where, if you're an athlete, right, and things aren't going your way and you're getting rushed and hurried, right, especially for football players, this is where just get back in the huddle, take that deep breath, start to relax, and maybe even, this is where you consult with the coaches, right? Do I have a timeout to burn here? I think we need to use one. And instead, what's going to happen is a certain cornerback who's turned his 23rd birthday, 22nd birthday, Cooper DeJean, can he go all the way? And he does, right? And I think another fascinating thing with, him, he was a punt returner growing up, and returned punts, and you saw him returning punts in the Super Bowl. But the fascinating thing, right, not only are you playing, right, you want to kind of show off and show out on your birthday, right? He undercuts this route beautifully, gets the ball, and the cool thing with this is just his patience and vision. It's not like he just starts full out sprinting, right? He looks for where blockers are. He's stopping right here. He's juking, and then he's kind of making that dive for the pylon before he kind of stops, right? That is a trained thing, right? To be able to focus, figure out what's going on, scan the field around you. It's a really big thing. Football, soccer players know it. I feel a ton, right? The ability to scan and constantly look for things around you and what are those moving pieces around you. Same thing with basketball on a basketball court, right? You have to scan, look around, see what the moving pieces are. And he's doing that, right, in real time, really fast, but still moving at an appropriate speed, but slowing it down when he needed to. And I thought that was just a really important mental piece to kind of show off, right? His vision, his concentration, his ability to focus on the things and what he needs to do in that moment. So we're continuing on. Now it's 17-0. The lead is mounting, and me, obviously, as a Patriots fan, hoping that the trophy for the Super Bowl MVP will eventually be named the Brady. We're watching this. Tom Brady is obviously commentating on this, and me as a Patriots fan is wondering, are they really going to make Tom Brady call this Chiefs comeback? So, continuing on, right? Can they do it? They're still getting beaten down, but this is the Kansas City Chiefs. These are the two-time defending Super Bowl champions. If anyone can get there, right, it's going to be that. Kansas City getting the ball back here, and got a little ahead of myself on this play, but right, the next play we're going to show you is once again these self-inflicted kind of wounds, and Patrick Mahomes in his end zone throwing and just does not see Zach Bond undercut. Another unsung hero of this Philadelphia defense, right? Brought in this year, was a practice squad player, I think, a special teams player for the New Orleans Saints, and turned into this all-pro linebacker, which is a crazy thing, right? Crazy confidence, crazy trust, right? That can be built into him, right? They trusted him to do this role. They, saw his work ethic, his talent, and I think that was another kind of just important thing for him, right? Getting that interception just breeds that confidence that he's kind of getting and having. And now it's 17-0, and the Eagles are marching down the field, and yet again, another touchdown by who? A.J. Brown, the man that does reading on the sidelines to get his headspace and mindset right in between these drives. So now it's 24-0, 24-0 as we head into halftime. Obviously, we had the Kendrick Lamar Super Bowl halftime show. This episode will not be breaking down the halftime shows. You can find that on your own. And we're going to see if the Chiefs can keep the Chief Pete alive. Can they come back down 24-0? Largest Super Bowl comeback. New England Patriots, Super Bowl 51, down 25 against the Atlanta Falcons. Can the Chiefs do the same thing? And you see the NFL films clips, right? And you saw eventually when these guys get down, they can make it a game, right? They've been in the playoffs, and this is where if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, you've been in these games before. Shockingly, not so shockingly maybe. They were down 24-0 to the Houston Texans a few postseasons ago, and then eventually scored like 51 straight points, ended up winning 51-31 or something like that, I believe was the final score, right? So using and relying on that past experience sometimes as an athlete is huge, especially when the moment isn't going your way this time, right? You're down 24-0, and they're all like, we can do this. We can make this comeback. Comebacks have been made at this stage before, right? That's another big piece to it. You can gain confidence from not only your own past experiences, but other past experiences as well, right? And what are those teams doing? They're doing simple better, and that's what they need to focus on. You see this a lot of time in sports is when people feel like they need to make the comebacks, they start exerting themselves more. You have to conserve the energy that you have to make these comebacks and just make the right play, not make the extra play sometimes. So, as you see here, breaking down that beautiful kind of crossing route. We're not going to get too far into it. We're going to figure out, Kansas City comes back out after halftime. Still looks flat. Is the energy there? Is it not there? Can they figure something out as they keep moving on here? So 24-0. Clock starting to move down. Eagles fans are getting happy, ecstatic. We're going to have another field goal. This one at Chip Shop by Jake Elliott. We like to show the scoring plays because those are the ones that really are important to matter. Once again, following his routine, drills it. Absolutely crucial. 27-0 now. Once again, Chiefs players on the sideline, you can hear them. We can see the NFL films clips of it. Hey, we can do this. Other teams have done it before. We got this. We're still trying to have that positive sideline energy, which is what you need. And eventually we're going to get to more sacks by the Philly offense. But right now, or by the Philly defense, we have the Philly offense on the field, 2:47 left. And once again, the cool thing you see, Nick Sirianni, offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore for the Eagles, saying, call it, just call the play. And this is, I think, something that's really cool. If you look at, the Philadelphia sports history, the way they won their first Super Bowl against my New England Patriots and against Tom Brady was they went for things. They were aggressive. They kept their foot on the gas the whole season, or the whole game, and throughout the whole season. You can kind of see it with the New York Jets this year. Even though they didn't have a successful season, their big quote that they were using all year, or acronym, was AGNB, all gas, no brakes. And that's what we're about to see here from the Philadelphia Eagles. Play action, just run the clock out, right? Just run it. No, we're going to throw a 50-yard bomb to former Heisman Trophy winner Devontae Smith and basically ice this game, right? There's the dagger. Is it a run or is it the dagger? I think is what Kevin Burkhardt was saying on the broadcast, right? Let's just run it with Saquon. Let's just milk some clock and maybe just give the Chiefs the ball back, right? That won't hurt. No, we're going to go for it because now, statistically speaking, right, which can give you all the confidence in the world, no team has ever come back from this deficit in a Super Bowl. Now things are starting to get ugly. Once again, we have Jake Elliott following his routine, doing all these little things correct, and boom, nails the extra point. Almost went over the netting to catch the ball, right? So they're feeling it. The Eagles are excited. They're getting into it. And can the Chiefs score, right? No team that has ever lost the Super Bowl has not scored 0 points. And here we see him throw this absolute dart to Xavier Worthy. And the Chiefs are looking to score. They're looking to get on the board. They're looking to, not make history anymore, but not be on the wrong side of history. We see Patrick doing his thing, getting it, and eventually we see the Chiefs get to the end zone finally, right? On this play, I believe, right here, boom. Touchdown, Xavier Worthy, the rookie out of Texas. First time a Texas player has ever scored in the Super Bowl, I believe, which was a crazy stat when I read it. So absolutely insane. And once again, just not doing the little things right in this game, right? And it's about doing your job, executing your role, but at least they're on the board. There will be no zero. There'll be no shutout in this Super Bowl. And this is where a lot of coaches still take pride, right? Why not just hang it up? Why not just, go away? Because this is how you build your team. This is how you build your team's, identity. And that's a really big piece that we talk about a lot of times with athletes is how do you build this athlete identity? How do you make sure that you're doing all the right things or figuring out who you are? That way it can kind of, transfer onto the field here. The Eagles just once again, just still throwing, right? These are all running situations, right? Typically speaking in the football, they are going for it, right? They're following their team's history of when they do these things, when they play aggressive football, right? This is their identity to go for it, get after it, and continue to make sure we're not giving the ball back to the Kansas City Chiefs to do anything whatsoever here. And just continue to march and continue to drive and continue to play their style of game. And once again, I believe it ends up in another field goal attempt that had to be pushed back by yardage, right? And he still makes it. Once again, 4 for 4 on the day, but really 7 of 4, the way he had to make all these extra kicks. Eagles kicker Jake Elliott. And here, one of the bigger plays of the game. Can the Chiefs make the comeback? Can Mahomes just unload his arm and a strip sack fumble, right? These just things trying to do too much. Not just trying to get the simple kind of play maybe done here, but really just trying to go for it. You have nothing to lose maybe at this point, and this is what I always like to say with athletes. We have to reframe that. If you're going out there thinking you have nothing to lose, all you're thinking about is, the one that you've already lost and that you kind of have no shot or no chance at this. It's still trying to be reframing that to be hopeful in a way instead, right? So you should really be saying, we're going to go out there and compete hard, boys, still. Like, let's still get after it. Let's put a couple more on the board. Let's make this a little bit more respectable even. So next big play here, another Eagles field goal. Once again, it was a 45-yard attempt, pushed back by penalty, and they can't stop this man, right? Makes a 50-yard field goal, gaining so much extra confidence, right? And Jake Elliott has had a terrific postseason career. I don't believe he's ever missed a field goal and the postseason. So now it's just what's Kansas City going to do? They're still going to compete, right? That's who they are. That's the championship DNA and medal that they bring to the table. And they're not going to stop just because the scoreboard and the clock hasn't stopped yet, right? So you see them, they're still marching, they're still driving, they are still scoring touchdowns. And I believe, right, a couple more, they got another touchdown. I believe that one was a rushing touchdown or passing touchdown. But this absolutely insane play, right, I think is what we're going to see next year. Once again, Eagles going for it on 4th and 6. Why? Just punt at that point, right? That's the DNA. And then you see Patrick Mahomes unload, and I think we're going to see a lot of this next year, right? Getting back to that identity of the past Chiefs teams of having that deep threat. And Xavier Worthy with this fantastic, absolutely phenomenal catch. And this guy had a wonderful Super Bowl. Rookie Texas wide receiver, Xavier Worthy. Lots of yardage, lots of catches, lots of touchdowns, crazy, insane focus, the ball tracking ability. And there's ways to work on this, right? From the kind of mental and blending that mental and physical kind of standpoints together. You can grab a tennis ball, you can write numbers on it, you can put colors on a different one, but you literally just throw it and then you catch it, and then you can kind of see, all right, what number do I see, right? 1, catch it, boom, right? And so maybe it's a different colored tennis ball, right? And then it's like you see a couple and then you have to catch this blue one, right? This is how wide receivers work on their concentration and focus to make sure that they can make catches like this in the biggest games, in the biggest moments, right? But this is what I think we will expect to see a lot next year, and I think a really kind of cool moment for, Xavier Worthy having this big Super Bowl, because the Chiefs will be back, and I think they know that they'll be back. But today is all about the Philadelphia Eagles and backup quarterback. The last play here that I think we're going to showcase for today, the final couple of first downs that they're grabbing. Once again, not running, passing the football, and the final kneel down from Kenny Pickett to make sure that the Eagles are Super Bowl 59 world champions. And right, and the jubilation for the Eagles, the maybe humiliation for the Kansas City Chiefs. But as you see here, right, the biggest piece and one of the biggest things that we teach athletes and that you learn from a young age, that golden or platinum rule of respect. We're shaking hands. We're going to show good sportsmanship. That is the big key piece. We teach all these mental skills, but these are just basic skills that you need to have before you can even build these mental skills. Are you going to shake the opponent's hand, congratulate them, wish them luck, we'll see you hopefully again next season, or we'll get you next time, right? Maybe a little bit of banter, but showing that good sportsmanship, absolutely crucial as you see the kind of two quarterbacks surrounded by all this media, but shaking hands and, whatever is said between them, that's more so between them and Super Bowl champions, right? No better feeling. And this is something we try to talk a lot about with athletes is, what are the emotions that you're going to associate? Can you visualize yourself winning? What is that going to feel like? Can you experience these emotions? And you can kind of see the wide range with these celebrations, right? But at least showing the sportsmanship and the respect is the last kind of biggest piece. So kind of a shorter version of Mental Breakdown today, going through the Super Bowl quickly. But I think that's the wrap of this Athlete Cafe Mental Breakdown style, right? We'll catch you next time. And if there's any sporting event, big or small, your own sporting event that you want to see broken down from a mental standpoint, leave a comment, drop a follow, contact us, and bye, Eagles, bye.
If you like what you're listening to, be sure to follow the Athlete Cafe on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. You can find us wherever you enjoy listening to your podcasts.